The detective asked, who else had access? My wife's alibi fell apart. The detective's pen scratched against his notepad as he looked up from the storage unit inventory. So Mr. Chen, who else had access to Unit 247? I wiped sweat from my forehead despite the October chill. Just me. I'm the only one with keys. Detective Morrison nodded, his gray eyes scanning the ransacked storage unit behind us. My mother's entire life had been carefully organized in here just 3 months ago, her jewelry collection in labeled boxes, photo albums wrapped in protective plastic, the antique china set she'd inherited from my grandmother. Now half of it was gone. Your wife doesn't have a key. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. Sarah's never even been here. She said going through Mom's things made her too sad. I thought it was sweet at the time, how Sarah had teared up whenever I mentioned sorting through the estate. Mom had died suddenly in July, a heart attack at 62 while gardening in her backyard. Sarah had been so supportive during those first awful weeks, holding me while I cried, handling the funeral arrangements when I couldn't function. Detective Morrison scribbled something down. The facility manager says the unit was accessed 17 times in the past 2 months. All during weekday afternoons between 11:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. My stomach lurched. That's impossible. I work downtown, I've only been here maybe 4 times since August, always on weekends. The security footage shows a woman matching your wife's description. Brunette, about 5 feet 4 inches, drives a silver Honda Civic. The parking lot seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Sarah drove a silver Civic. Sarah was 5 feet 4 inches with shoulder-length brown hair. Sarah worked as a dental hygienist just 15 minutes from here. Sarah took lunch breaks every day from noon to 1 p.m. There has to be some mistake, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, puzzle pieces were clicking into place. The way she'd been vague about her weekend plans lately. How she'd suddenly developed an interest in antique jewelry, showing me pictures on her phone of pieces she found online. The expensive handbag she bought last month that she claimed was a gift from her sister. My mother's sapphire brooch. The one she'd worn in every family photo for 20 years. It had been in a velvet box on the top shelf, and now it was gone. Mr. Chen. Detective Morrison's voice sounded far away. You mentioned wanting to donate most of the estate proceeds to the children's hospital. What was the estimated value? 250,000, I whispered. Mom left everything to me, but she always talked about helping sick kids. She volunteered at St. Mary's Pediatric Ward for 15 years. The detective's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry. I know this is difficult, but I need to ask, where did your wife say she was yesterday between noon and 1 p.m.? Yesterday. When I discovered the theft and called the police. When I come home devastated, telling Sarah someone had broken into Mom's storage unit and stolen her most precious belongings. Sarah had held me while I sobbed into her shoulder. She'd made me tea and rubbed my back and promised we'd figure out who could have done such a horrible thing. She said she was at work, I said numbly. She said she never left the office. Detective Morrison closed his notepad. Mr. Chen, I think we need to have a longer conversation. The detective's office smelled like stale coffee and disappointment. I sat across from Morrison's metal desk, staring at a manila folder thick with photographs and documents that apparently detailed my wife's betrayal. Your wife's employer confirmed she's been taking extended lunch breaks for the past 8 weeks, Morrison said, sliding a printed email across the desk. Her supervisor, Janet Walsh, says Sarah requested flexible lunch hours back in September. Claimed she needed to help care for a sick relative. My hands shook as I read the email. Sarah had never mentioned any sick relatives. Her parents lived in Florida and were healthier than most people half their age. There's more. Morrison opened the folder and pulled out a stack of security camera screenshots. These are from the storage facility. The first photo showed a woman from behind, pulling a cart toward Unit 247. The timestamp read September 15, 12:43 p.m. The woman wore Sarah's favorite burgundy cardigan, the one I bought her for our anniversary last year. The second photo was clearer. Sarah's profile as she bent over the storage unit lock, her hair falling across her face exactly the way it did when she concentrated on crossword puzzles at our kitchen table. How did she get keys? My voice cracked. I only have one set. We're looking into that. But Mr. Chen, I need you to understand, this appears to be premeditated. She's been planning this for months. Morrison pulled out another document. We traced some of the stolen items. Your mother's pearl necklace was sold to Hartley's Antiques on October 3rd for $1,800. The buyer provided this driver's license for the transaction. He slid a photocopy across the desk. Sarah's smiling face stared up at me from her DMV photo, but the transaction receipt showed a fake name, Sandra Collins. My chest felt like it was caving in. She used an alias. Multiple aliases, actually. Sandra Collins, Susan Carter, Sally Cross. Always keeping the same initials, SC, probably so she wouldn't slip up if someone called her by the wrong name. I thought about the $1,800. Mom's pearls had been appraised at $4,200 just last year for insurance purposes. Sarah had sold them for less than half their value, probably because she needed quick cash and couldn't risk a lengthy authentication process. What else? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Morrison pulled out a bank statement. We got a warrant for financial records. Your wife opened a separate savings account at First National on August 12th. 3 weeks after your mother's funeral. The account balance made my stomach drop, $47,300. $47,000, I whispered. Deposits matched the dates of storage unit access. Always cash deposits, always under $10,000 to avoid triggering federal reporting requirements. She knew exactly what she was doing. I stared at the numbers, trying to process the scope of Sarah's deception. This wasn't some desperate, spur-of-the-moment decision. She'd researched federal banking laws. She'd created multiple fake identities. She'd been systematically dismantling my mother's legacy while comforting me through my grief. Mr. Chen, I have to ask, did your wife know about your plans to donate the estate to the children's hospital? The question hit like a physical blow. Yes. I told her the night after the funeral. She said she thought it was beautiful, that Mom would be so proud. Morrison nodded grimly. So she knew she had a limited window. Once you donated everything, there'd be nothing left to steal. I buried my face in my hands. Sarah hadn't just stolen from me, she'd stolen from sick children. From the memory of a woman who'd spent her retirement volunteering to help kids fight cancer and diabetes and heart defects. What happens now? I asked. Detective Morrison's smile was cold and professional. Now we build a case. The evidence kept piling up like an avalanche I couldn't escape. Detective Morrison spread out more photos across his desk, credit card statements, receipts, even surveillance footage from 3 different antique shops across the city. Your mother's jade figurine collection, he said, pointing to a receipt dated September 28, sold to Ming Dynasty Antiques for $3,200. The owner, Mrs. Liu, remembers the seller specifically because she seemed nervous and didn't know basic details about the piece's origins. I recognized Mom's careful handwriting on the insurance documentation Morrison showed me next. She described each figurine in detail, noting which ones had been wedding gifts from my father, which ones she collected during their trip to China for their 20th anniversary. Total appraised value, $8,900. Sarah sold them for a third of what they were worth, I said numbly. She was prioritizing speed over profit. Mrs. Liu said the woman, who gave her name as Susan Carter, kept checking her watch and seemed eager to complete the transaction quickly. Because Sarah only had an hour for lunch. Because she had to get back to work and pretend to be the grieving daughter-in-law who was too emotional to help sort through my mother's belongings. Morrison pulled up something on his computer screen. We found her online research history. Your wife spent considerable time on estate sale websites, antique pricing guides, and, this is interesting, forums about inheritance law in California. My mouth went dry. Inheritance law. Specifically, she researched spousal rights to inherited property. Whether she'd be entitled to half of your mother's estate in case of divorce. The room felt like it was spinning. She was planning to leave me. Or she wanted to know her legal position either way. Mr. Chen, your wife didn't just steal from you randomly. She researched the most valuable items first. Morrison showed me a printout of Mom's insurance policy. Several items were highlighted in yellow, the sapphire brooch, the pearl necklace, a set of gold coins my grandfather had collected. Every single highlighted item was now missing from the storage unit. She had Mom's insurance documents, I realized. They were in the file box with the birth certificates and tax returns. Sarah used them like a shopping list. We think she photographed the documents during one of her first visits, then targeted the highest value items she could easily transport and sell. Morrison's voice was matter-of-fact, but I could see anger flickering in his eyes. Your wife stole approximately $73,000 worth of property and sold it for $47,300. She accepted the loss because she needed items that wouldn't require extensive authentication. I thought about Sarah coming home every day for the past 2 months, kissing me hello, asking about my day. Making dinner while thousands of dollars in stolen goods sat in her secret bank account. Lying next to me in bed while she planned which of my mother's treasures to steal next. There's something else, Morrison said quietly. We contacted the storage facility about how she got access. They keep records of all key duplications. He slid another document across the desk. A key duplication request form from July 15th, 3 days after Mom's funeral, when I was still barely functional with grief. The signature at the bottom was mine. Or rather, a very good forgery of my signature. She practiced, I whispered, staring at the familiar loops and angles of what looked like my handwriting. Sarah always teased me about my messy signature. She said she could forge it better than I could write it. I'd thought it was just playful banter between spouses. Apparently, she'd been preparing for this even before we buried my mother. Morrison closed the folder. Mr. Chen, we have enough evidence to arrest your wife on multiple felony charges. Grand theft, fraud, forgery. But I wanted to speak with you first about how you'd like to proceed. The weight of the decision settled on my shoulders. In a few hours, I'd have to go home and look Sarah in the eyes, knowing everything. The drive home felt like traveling to my own execution. Every red light gave me more time to rehearse what I'd say, how I'd act normal until I decided what to do with Morrison's evidence burning like acid in my chest. Sarah's silver Civic was already in our driveway when I pulled up at 6:30 p.m. Through the kitchen window, I could see her moving around, probably starting dinner like she had every night for 8 years. Like she had every night while systematically robbing my mother's memory. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, gripping the steering wheel and staring at Detective Morrison's business card. He'd told me to call him once I made my decision about pressing charges. Take the evening to think about it, he'd said. But don't wait too long. Every day she has access to that storage unit is another day she can destroy evidence. The front door opened before I reached it. Sarah stood there in her navy scrubs, her hair pulled back in the messy bun she always wore after work. She looked tired and concerned and completely innocent. Hey, babe, she said, reaching up to kiss my cheek. How was your day? You look exhausted. I forced myself to kiss her back, tasting the mint lip balm she'd worn since college. Long day. Just tired. Well, I'm making your favorite, chicken parmesan. And I picked up that bottle of wine you mentioned wanting to try. She squeezed my hand. I thought we could use a nice evening together. You've been so stressed about your mom's things. The casual mention of Mom's belongings made my stomach clench. I followed Sarah into our kitchen, watching her move around the space we'd renovated together 3 years ago. She hummed softly while breading chicken cutlets, the same off-key version of yesterday she always hummed when she cooked. Everything looked normal. Everything felt like a lie. Sarah, I said carefully, I wanted to ask you about something. She glanced over her shoulder, eyebrows raised. What's up? The storage unit. I was thinking maybe it's time you came with me to help sort through the rest of Mom's things. I know it's hard for you, but I could really use the support. Sarah's hand stilled for just a moment, so briefly I might have imagined it. Then she resumed breading the chicken, her voice perfectly steady. Oh, honey, you know how emotional I get about your mom's stuff. I just don't think I'd be much help. I'd probably just cry the whole time. She turned to face me, her brown eyes soft with apparent sympathy. But if you really need me there, of course I'll come. The offer sounded so genuine, so loving. If I didn't know better, I believed she was just a caring wife trying to protect herself from painful memories. Actually, I said, watching her face carefully, Detective Morrison thinks whoever's been stealing from the unit has keys. He asked if anyone else had access. This time, Sarah's reaction was unmistakable. Her face went pale, and she dropped the piece of chicken she'd been holding. It landed on the counter with a wet slap. Detective Morrison asked about me. Her voice was higher than usual, strained. Why would he ask about me? He's asking about everyone close to the family. Standard procedure, I guess. I kept my tone casual, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. I told him you'd never even been to the storage place. That seemed to satisfy him. Sarah nodded quickly, too quickly. Right. Because I haven't. You know I haven't. But her hands were shaking now as she reached for a paper towel to clean up the dropped chicken. When she bent over the counter, I saw a thin sheen of sweat on the back of her neck despite the cool October evening. Sarah, I said quietly, is there anything you want to tell me? She straightened slowly, paper towel clutched in her white-knuckled fist. For a long moment, we stared at each other across our kitchen island, the same granite countertop where we'd shared breakfast that morning, where she'd kissed me goodbye and told me she loved me. What do you mean? Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos Detective Morrison had sent me. The first one showed her burgundy cardigan, clear as day in the storage facility hallway. I set the phone on the counter between us. Sarah looked down at the screen and went completely still. The color drained from her face so quickly I thought she might faint. The security cameras, Sarah. They have you on 17 different visits. She sank onto one of our bar stools, still clutching the paper towel. I can explain. Explain what? The fake names. Susan Carter. Sandra Collins. My voice was getting louder despite my efforts to stay calm. Explain the secret bank account with $47,000 in it. Sarah's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Then, to my complete shock, she started crying. Not the gentle tears I'd seen her shed over my mother's death, but harsh, ugly sobs that shook her entire body. I'm so sorry, she gasped between sobs. David, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? The question came out like a snarl. When you forged my signature to get duplicate keys 3 days after we buried my mother, exactly how far were you planning to take it? She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. You don't understand. We needed the money. We needed the money. Sarah, I make $80,000 a year. You make 50. We don't have any debt except the mortgage. What money did we need? For the house, she said desperately. For the down payment on the bigger house. You said you wanted to start a family, and this place is too small, and I found that beautiful colonial on Maple Street. The one you showed me last month. I stared at her in disbelief. The one I said was too expensive. The one I said we should wait another 2 years to afford. Sarah nodded miserably. But I called the realtor, and she said someone else was interested, and if we could just put down 20% instead of 10%, we could make a competitive offer. So you decided to steal from my dead mother. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. You decided to rob the woman who treated you like a daughter so you could buy a house I specifically said we couldn't afford. I was going to pay it back. Sarah's voice cracked. I had it all planned out. I was only going to take enough for the down payment, and then once we got the house and refinanced in a few years, I was going to put the money back before you donated everything to the hospital. I felt like I was looking at a stranger. You were going to steal from sick children and then pay it back later. That was your plan. I knew you'd never agree to keep any of the inheritance for ourselves. You're too good, too noble. Her laugh was bitter and broken. But David, your mom left you almost $300,000 worth of stuff. Would it have been so terrible to keep just $50,000 of it? Just enough to get us started? Yes, I said flatly. It would have been terrible. Because it wasn't mine to keep. I made a promise. Sarah wiped her nose with a paper towel, leaving smears of mascara across her cheeks. I love you so much. I just wanted us to have the life we dreamed about. I wanted to give you everything. By lying to me every day for 2 months. By using fake identities. By stealing my mother's wedding pearls. I shook my head. The sapphire brooch, Sarah. Mom wore that in every family photo. It was going to be the one thing I kept to remember her by. Her face crumpled. I still have it. I couldn't bring myself to sell that one. It's in our safety deposit box. Along with what else? Some of the coins. A few pieces of jewelry I thought you might want to keep. Sarah looked at me pleadingly. I never sold the really important stuff, the things that had sentimental value. All of it had sentimental value. I slammed my hand on the counter, making her jump. Every single piece was part of her life, part of our family's history. And you turned it into cash for a house we don't need. Sarah dissolved into fresh tears, but I felt nothing but cold fury as I watched her cry. The chicken sat abandoned on the counter, growing cold while my wife sobbed into her hands. I stood there watching her fall apart, waiting to feel something other than disgust. This was Sarah, the woman I'd married 8 years ago, who'd held my hand through my father's cancer diagnosis, who talked me through panic attacks during my worst days at the accounting firm. But all I could see now was a stranger who'd spent 2 months perfecting the art of betraying me. David, please, she whispered, looking up at me with swollen eyes. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. I can put the money back, return everything I still have. With what money, Sarah? You've already spent it. I pulled out Detective Morrison's documentation and spread it across our granite counter. $47,000 in cash deposits. Where did that money go if not toward your dream house? Sarah's face went white again. She stared at the bank statements like they might disappear if she looked hard enough. I used some of it for other things, she admitted quietly. What other things? She gestured vaguely around our kitchen. The new dishwasher. Your birthday present, that watch you loved. The vacation to Napa last month. Her voice got smaller with each item. I wanted to make you happy while we were saving for the house. My stomach dropped. The Tag Heuer watch I've been wearing every day since my birthday in September, bought with money from selling my mother's jade collection. The romantic weekend in wine country where Sarah had seemed so carefree and loving, funded by pawning family heirlooms I thought were safely stored away. How much is left? I asked. In the account? About $32,000. I did the math quickly. She'd stolen $73,000 worth of items, sold them for $47,000, and had already blown $15,000 on luxuries and lies. The watch cost $3 grand, didn't it? And Napa was another $2,000. I felt sick thinking about it. What else, Sarah? She couldn't meet my eyes. The ring. What ring? Sarah held up her right hand. On her ring finger, not the one with her wedding band, but her right hand, sat a diamond solitaire I'd never seen before. It caught the kitchen light and threw sparkles across the wall. I bought it as an anniversary gift for myself, she whispered. From us. I thought when we renewed our vows for our 10th anniversary next year, you could give it to me officially. Like a surprise you planned all along. The twisted logic of it made my head spin. She'd stolen from my mother, used the money to buy herself jewelry, and constructed an elaborate fantasy where I'd somehow get credit for the romantic gesture. Take it off, I said. David. Take it off now. With trembling fingers, Sarah slipped the ring off and placed it on the counter. Even in the overhead lighting, I could see it was substantial, easily 2 carats, maybe more. How much? $8,000, she whispered. $8,000. Probably from selling Mom's gold coin collection, the one my grandfather had started during the Depression and added to every Christmas until he died. Each coin had a story, a memory attached. Sarah had turned them into a piece of jewelry for herself. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Detective Morrison's number. What are you doing? Sarah's voice was sharp with panic. What I should have done 3 hours ago. David, wait, please don't call him. Not yet. Sarah grabbed my wrist, her fingers cold and desperate. Give me 24 hours. Let me return everything I can, close the account, make this right. The police don't have to be involved if I cooperate, if I fix this myself. I stared down at her hand on my arm. You think this is about the money? Isn't it? Sarah, you stole from my dead mother while I was grieving. You comforted me when I cried about the break-in at her storage unit. You let me believe some stranger had violated her memory. I pulled my arm free. This isn't about money. This is about who you really are. Her face crumpled again, but this time I heard something different in her sobs. Not just shame or regret, but the sound of someone who'd been caught and was running out of options. Detective Morrison answered on the second ring. Mr. Chen. Have you made your decision? I looked at Sarah, huddled on our bar stool surrounded by evidence of her betrayal, still wearing the scrubs from her job where she'd lied to her boss about sick relatives so she could rob my family. Yes, I said. I want to press charges. The line went quiet for a moment before Detective Morrison spoke again. I'll need you to come in tomorrow morning to file the formal complaint. Can you be at the station by 9 a.m.? I'll be there, I said, watching Sarah's face collapse as she realized what was happening. Mr. Chen, one more thing, does your wife have any reason to believe we're building a case? Any chance she might try to dispose of evidence or flee? I looked at Sarah, who was frantically shaking her head and mouthing, please don't, at me. She knows we're on to her. She just confessed to everything. In that case, I'm going to recommend we execute the arrest warrant tonight. We can't risk her accessing the storage unit again or liquidating that bank account. Morrison's voice was all business now. Can you keep her there for the next 2 hours while we finalize everything? Sarah must have heard enough of the conversation to understand. She bolted upright, knocking over the bar stool. David, no. You can't let them arrest me. Think about what this will do to our families, to your reputation. I'm a dental hygienist, I'll lose my license if I have a felony record. I covered the phone. You should have thought about that before you forged my signature. 2 hours, I told Morrison. We'll be here. After I hung up, Sarah started pacing frantically around our kitchen island. This is insane, David. You're going to destroy our entire life over money that was technically yours anyway. Your mother left everything to you, legally, it's your property. That I planned to donate. That you knew I was planning to donate. Plans change. People change their minds about charitable donations all the time. Sarah's voice was getting higher, more desperate. We could still donate most of it. Keep $50,000 for ourselves and give the rest to the hospital. Everyone wins. Everyone except the children who could have used that $50,000 for medical treatment. Sarah slammed her hand on the counter. Those kids don't even know the money exists. You can't steal something from people who never had it in the first place. The twisted logic was breathtaking. So if I robbed a bank, the customers wouldn't really be victims because they didn't know I was taking their specific deposits? That's different and you know it. No, Sarah. It's exactly the same. She stopped pacing and turned to face me, her expression shifting from panic to something harder. Fine. You want to know the real truth? I'm glad I took that money. Your mother spoiled you your entire life, and even after she died, you were going to give away your inheritance like some kind of saint. Well, I'm your wife. I deserved a say in what happened to $300,000. You deserved a say, so you just took it. I took what should have been ours anyway. Sarah's mask was completely off now, her voice sharp with resentment. 8 years, David. 8 years I played the perfect daughter-in-law. 8 years of Sunday dinners where your mother criticized everything from my cooking to my career to the fact that we weren't giving her grandchildren fast enough. I stared at her. Mom never criticized you. She did it so sweetly you never noticed. Oh Sarah, you're working late again. David needs someone who can take care of him. Sarah, have you thought about taking a cooking class? David loves homemade bread. Sarah, you know David's always wanted children, you're not getting any younger. Sarah's voice turned mocking, a cruel imitation of my mother's gentle tone. Every single conversation was about what I wasn't doing right for precious David. So yes, when she died and left me nothing, not even a piece of jewelry or a photo, I decided to take what I earned by putting up with her passive-aggressive bullshit for nearly a decade. The kitchen felt like it was spinning. She was going to leave you her opal necklace. It's in her will, she just hadn't updated it formally yet. Too little, too late. Sarah crossed her arms. Your mother never thought I was good enough for you, and she made sure I knew it. The cruelty in Sarah's voice hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't the woman I'd married, or maybe it was, and I'd just been too blind to see it. So this was revenge? I asked. You stole from a dead woman because you didn't like her tone of voice. I took what I was owed. Sarah's eyes glittered with 8 years of hidden resentment. Do you know what it's like to smile and nod while someone slowly tears you down? To bite your tongue every Sunday while mommy dearest suggests you're not woman enough to keep her son happy? She loved you. She tolerated me. Sarah laughed bitterly. The opal necklace. That ugly thing she wore to church. She probably left it to me because she knew I'd hate it. One last passive-aggressive gift from beyond the grave. I thought about Mom's opal necklace, how she'd worn it every Easter and Christmas, how she told me it was the first piece of jewelry my father ever bought her. How she planned to pass it down because she wanted Sarah to have something meaningful from our family. You're sick, I whispered. I'm practical. Sarah moved closer, her voice dropping to the persuasive tone she used when she wanted something. David, listen to me. We can still fix this. I'll return everything I haven't sold, give back the money, and we'll tell Detective Morrison it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe I'll say I was trying to surprise you by organizing the estate, or... Stop. I backed away from her. Just stop talking. But Sarah followed me, desperation making her bold. You love me. I know you love me, and I love you, and 8 years of marriage has to count for something. We can get counseling, work through this. You forged my signature 3 days after we buried my mother. I was trying to help with the estate management. You researched inheritance law to see if you could divorce me and take half. Sarah's face went white. She hadn't realized the police had found her internet search history. I was just curious about our legal rights. It didn't mean anything. Which aliases were your favorite? I asked conversationally. Sandra Collins. Susan Carter. How long did you spend practicing those signatures? David, please. Did you laugh when you sold Mom's pearls? When the antique dealer handed you $1,800 for a necklace she wore on her wedding day, did it feel good? Sarah's composure cracked completely. You want to know if it felt good? Yes, it felt good. It felt good to finally take something instead of always being grateful for scraps. It felt good to buy you nice things with money from the woman who spent 8 years making me feel worthless. Those weren't scraps. That was love. That was control. Sarah's voice turned vicious. She kept you dependent on her approval your whole life. Even now, even dead, you're still trying to be the perfect son by giving away money she left to you. When does it end, David? When do you finally choose your wife over your mommy? The words hung in the air like poison. I looked at this woman I'd shared a bed with for 8 years, who'd held me when I cried, who'd promised to love and honor me until death do us part. I did choose, I said quietly. I chose wrong. Sarah must have heard something final in my tone because her anger collapsed back into panic. David, no. Don't say that. We can work through this, we can. The doorbell rang. Through our front window, I could see Detective Morrison standing on our porch, along with 2 uniformed officers. Sarah saw them too and went completely still. You called them early, she whispered. I didn't call anyone. I checked my phone, 7:47 p.m. Morrison had said 2 hours, but apparently he decided not to wait. The doorbell rang again, followed by a firm knock. Police. We have a warrant for Sarah Chen. Sarah turned to me with wild eyes. The back door. If I can just get to my car. There's probably an officer in the alley too, I said. It's over, Sarah. She looked around our kitchen frantically, her gaze landing on the evidence spread across our counter, the bank statements, the photos, the receipts from her months of theft. 8 years of marriage reduced to a manila folder full of lies. This is really it, she asked. You're really going to let them arrest me? I thought about my mother's sapphire brooch, sitting in a safety deposit box instead of being donated with everything else. I thought about the children's hospital losing $50,000 because my wife wanted granite countertops and a bigger house. The knocking got louder. Yes, I said. It's really it. Sarah backed against our refrigerator as the pounding on the front door intensified. Police. Open up. I need 5 minutes, she said frantically, grabbing my arm. David, please. Just 5 minutes to think. I pulled away from her. Think about what? How to make this worse. The safety deposit box, she said rapidly. I can get you the key right now. Your mother's brooch, the coins I didn't sell, some of the jewelry, it's all there. If I cooperate fully, maybe they'll reduce the charges. The front door rattled as someone tested the handle. Through the window, I could see Detective Morrison gesturing to one of the uniformed officers. Where's the key? I asked. Sarah rushed to our junk drawer, frantically digging through batteries and takeout menus. Here. She thrust a small silver key at me. Box 247 at First National. The same number as the storage unit, I thought it would be easier to remember. Even in her panic, she'd been methodical. Organized. The woman who forgot to pay our electric bill on time had managed to orchestrate a 2-month theft operation with military precision. What else is in there? I demanded. Some cash. Maybe 8,000 in hundreds. Sarah's hands shook as she spoke. I was going to use it for the house down payment, but I kept some in cash in case. In case you needed to run. Her silence was answer enough. The doorbell rang 3 more times in rapid succession, followed by Detective Morrison's voice, Mr. Chen. We know you're in there. We need to speak with Sarah Chen regarding a warrant for her arrest. The bedroom window, Sarah whispered desperately. I could climb out onto the roof of the garage, drop down into the Henderson's yard. Sarah. I stared at her in disbelief. You're talking about fleeing from the police. Do you understand that would make this 10 times worse? It would give me time to figure out a plan. Your plan was to steal from my dead mother. Your planning skills aren't exactly trustworthy right now. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Outside, I heard the crackle of police radios and the sound of footsteps moving around to the back of our house. Morrison had indeed posted officers at all the exits. They've surrounded the house, I said. There's nowhere to run. Sarah sank onto the kitchen floor, her back against the refrigerator, and started crying again. But this time, through her tears, she was muttering something under her breath. What did you say? I asked. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. I said, your mother would have loved this. St. David's wife getting arrested while he watches like a righteous judge. She probably planned it this way. Planned what? Her own death. Her own robbery. Planned to keep controlling you even from the grave. Sarah's voice turned bitter even through her tears. Don't you see? She's still winning. Even now, you're choosing her over me. Mr. Chen. Morrison's voice boomed through our front door. If you don't open this door in the next 60 seconds, we're coming in. I walked toward the front hallway, Sarah's sobs echoing behind me. My hand hesitated on the deadbolt for just a moment, not because I was reconsidering, but because I knew that opening this door would end everything. 8 years of marriage, gone. Our shared life, destroyed. The future we'd planned, obliterated. But then I thought about the children's hospital, about the money that should have been helping sick kids instead of funding Sarah's fantasy life. I turned the deadbolt and opened the door. Detective Morrison stood on my front porch with an arrest warrant in his hand and grim satisfaction in his eyes. Where is she? He asked. Kitchen, I said, stepping aside to let Detective Morrison and the 2 officers into my house. Sarah was still on the floor when we walked in, but she'd stopped crying. Instead, she sat with her knees pulled up to her chest, staring at the evidence scattered across our counter with an expression I couldn't read. Sarah Chen, Detective Morrison said formally, you're under arrest for grand theft, fraud, and forgery. He nodded to one of the officers, who stepped forward with handcuffs. Wait, Sarah said, struggling to her feet. She looked directly at Morrison, ignoring me completely. I want to make a deal. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you exercise that right and speak with an attorney. I don't need an attorney. I need 5 minutes to tell you about David's involvement. The words hit me like ice water. My what? Sarah turned to face me for the first time since the police had arrived, and her expression was cold calculation mixed with desperate fury. You think I managed all of this alone? The key duplication, the storage unit visits, the bank account. She laughed bitterly. David knew about everything. That's a lie, I said immediately, but Detective Morrison held up a hand. Let her talk, he said quietly. Sarah stood straighter, her voice gaining confidence as she spun her story. David was furious when his mother's will specified that everything should eventually go to charity. He said she was controlling him from beyond the grave, that he deserved something after putting up with her demands his whole life. Sarah, stop. The storage unit key. David gave it to me himself. He said he couldn't bear to go through his mother's things, but he wanted me to take photos of everything so we could decide what was worth keeping before the charity pickup. Sarah's voice took on the earnest tone she used with her dental patients. He told me to research the values, to understand what we were giving away. Morrison pulled out his notepad, though his expression remained skeptical. And the bank account? Joint decision. David said we needed somewhere to put the money temporarily while we figured out how much to keep versus how much to donate. Sarah was warming to her story now, the lies flowing smoothly. The false names were his idea too. He said if anyone questioned the sales later, it would be better if they couldn't immediately trace them back to the estate. I stared at my wife in complete shock. She wasn't just throwing me under the bus, she was reversing over me repeatedly. This is insane, I said. Detective Morrison, you know this is insane. Why would I call you about the theft if I was involved? Sarah smiled, actually smiled, for the first time since the police had arrived. Because you got scared when Detective Morrison started investigating. You realized the security cameras might have caught you at the storage unit too, so you decided to play the grieving son whose wife had betrayed him. I was never at the storage unit during those times. I was at work. Were you? Sarah asked sweetly. Detective Morrison, you should check David's work attendance records for the past 2 months. I think you'll find some interesting gaps during lunch hours. My mouth went dry. She was right, I had taken several long lunches recently, but for completely innocent reasons. A dental cleaning in September that ran over. 2 client meetings at restaurants. A doctor's appointment last week that I'd scheduled during lunch to avoid missing work. Morrison was writing in his notepad now, and I could see the doubt creeping into his expression. The watch David's wearing, Sarah continued, the one he claims I bought him for his birthday. Check the receipt. It was purchased with cash while David was conveniently running errands during his lunch break. He'll say he didn't know where I got the money, but who spends $3,000 without asking their spouse where the cash came from? She was taking every innocent detail of our life together and twisting it into evidence of conspiracy. The romantic weekend in Napa became a celebration of our successful theft. The new dishwasher became a joint purchase with stolen money. Even my genuine grief over the storage unit break-in became an elaborate performance to throw off suspicion. Detective Morrison, I said desperately, call my office. Call my boss, Jerry Patterson. He can verify. What Jerry can verify, Sarah interrupted, is that you've been distracted and secretive for weeks. Taking personal calls during work hours, leaving early for family business. He's probably been wondering what's going on with you. She was right again. Jerry had commented just last week about how I seemed stressed, how I'd been less focused since my mother's death. Normal grief behavior that Sarah was now reframing as guilty conscience. Morrison looked between us, his pen hovering over his notepad. Mrs. Chen, these are serious accusations. Do you have any proof of your husband's involvement? Sarah's smile widened. Check his laptop. Search history for antique valuations, inheritance law, charity donation tax implications. David spent hours researching the best ways to liquidate estate items while minimizing legal complications. Another truth twisted into a lie. I had researched those things, because I wanted to handle my mother's donation properly, legally, and with full transparency. The second officer stepped forward. Detective, should we take them both in? Morrison studied my face carefully. Mr. Chen, I have to ask, is there any truth to what your wife is saying? I looked at Sarah, seeing a stranger wearing my wife's face. 8 years of marriage, and I'd never realized she was capable of this level of calculated cruelty. No, I said firmly. There's no truth to any of it. Sarah shrugged. Then you won't mind if they search your laptop, your phone records, your work schedule. Innocent people don't have anything to hide, right, David? Morrison closed his notepad with a snap. Mrs. Chen, you're still under arrest. Mr. Chen, I'm going to need you to come to the station for additional questioning. As the officer moved toward Sarah with the handcuffs, she looked at me one final time. See you at the station, partner, she said. The police station felt like a fluorescent-lit nightmare at 11:30 p.m. I sat in interview room B, staring at my reflection in the two-way mirror while Detective Morrison reviewed his notes at a metal table that had probably witnessed 1,000 confessions. Your wife is quite convincing, Morrison said without looking up. She's given us a very detailed timeline of your alleged involvement. I rubbed my temples, exhaustion making everything feel surreal. She's lying about all of it. Here's what troubles me, Mr. Chen. Morrison pulled out a printed document. I had an officer run by your workplace to check your keycard access records. You badged out for extended lunch breaks on September 15th, September 28th, October 3rd, and October 10th. Those dates match 4 of the storage unit thefts exactly. My stomach dropped. I can explain every single one of those. September 15th was your dentist appointment, according to your wife. Convenient that it was at Dr. Bradley's office, just 12 minutes from the storage facility. Morrison's gray eyes never left my face. September 28th, you met a client at Romano's restaurant. Also 12 minutes away. You can call Dr. Bradley. Call Romano's. But even as I said it, I realized how weak it sounded. Of course I'd be near the storage facility. Sarah had specifically recommended Dr. Bradley last year, claiming he was the best dentist in the area. She'd probably been scouting locations even then. Morrison flipped to another page. Your wife provided us with some interesting text messages from your phone. He slid a printed screenshot across the table. It showed a conversation between me and Sarah from October 3rd. David, running late, meeting went long. Sarah, no problem, take your time. Handle everything you need to handle. David, thanks for understanding. This is harder than I thought it would be. Sarah, I know baby. But we're doing the right thing. I stared at the messages, remembering that day clearly. The client meeting at Romano's had run over, and I texted Sarah to let her know I'd be late for dinner. The harder than I thought referred to discussing my mother's estate donation with the client, who was also a lawyer and had offered to review the paperwork pro bono. This conversation looks completely innocent in context, I said desperately. She's taking normal messages and making them sound sinister. What about this one? Morrison showed me another screenshot from September 28th. David, got everything sorted. Feeling better about the whole situation. Sarah, I'm proud of you for taking control. Your mom would understand. David, hope so. See you tonight. That had been after finalizing the donation paperwork with the Children's Hospital. I'd felt relieved to have everything legally arranged, to know I was honoring Mom's memory properly. But stripped of context and filtered through Sarah's lies, it read like a confession to theft. Detective Morrison, my wife is a sociopath, I said flatly. She's taking 8 years of innocent conversations and twisting them to save herself. Maybe. But here's what I can't get past. Your wife knew details about this investigation that only someone involved would know. Morrison leaned forward. She told us about the insurance documents in the storage unit, the ones we never mentioned to you. She described the exact layout of the facility, down to which hallway the security cameras cover. She even knew the storage unit number before we told her. Because she's been there 17 times. Your own security footage proves that. Or because you both have been there. Morrison's voice was patient but firm. Mr. Chen, I've been doing this for 15 years. Domestic conspiracies are more common than you'd think. Couples get in financial trouble, someone dies and leaves money, and suddenly theft starts looking like a solution. I wanted to scream. Sarah had constructed a perfect frame, using my legitimate grief counseling, my routine doctor appointments, even my careful legal research into charitable donations as evidence of guilt. Every responsible action I'd taken was now suspicious. Every loving text I'd sent her was now a confession. What happens now? I asked. Morrison closed the file. Now we investigate both versions of the story. 3 hours later, Morrison returned to the interview room with a different expression, less skeptical, more apologetic. Behind him walked a woman in a rumpled business suit carrying a thick manila folder. Mr. Chen, this is Detective Lisa Park from our Financial Crimes Unit, Morrison said, settling back into his chair. She's been reviewing the evidence while we talked. Detective Park spread several documents across the table. Your wife made one critical mistake in her story, she said without preamble. The timeline doesn't work. I sat up straighter, hope flickering in my chest for the first time in hours. The bank account containing the stolen funds was opened on August 12th, Park continued. But according to your work records, you were in a mandatory all-day training seminar that day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 43 witnesses, including your supervisor. Morrison pulled out his notepad. Your wife claims you opened the account together during your lunch break. But First National's records show the account was opened at 2:47 p.m. by a single individual, a woman matching your wife's description. She signed both names, Park added, sliding a signature card across the table. But the handwriting analysis came back an hour ago. Both signatures were written by the same person attempting to disguise their writing for the second name. I stared at the signature card, seeing my forged name in Sarah's carefully altered handwriting. She'd practiced my signature enough to fool a storage facility clerk, but bank documents required more scrutiny. There's more, Morrison said. We pulled security footage from Romano's restaurant for September 28th. You're clearly visible having lunch with attorney James Walsh from 12:15 to 2:10 p.m. The storage facility was accessed at 1:23 p.m. that same day. Unless you can be in two places at once, your wife's story falls apart, Park concluded. Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt dizzy. What about the other dates? All verified. Dr. Bradley's office has you on video in their waiting room during the September 15th theft. Your October 3rd client meeting has 3 witnesses. Morrison's expression had shifted to something approaching an apology. Your wife constructed an elaborate frame job, Mr. Chen. She's intelligent and methodical, but she made assumptions about our investigation techniques. Park gathered the documents into a neat stack. Mrs. Chen also made the mistake of providing too much detail. When suspects volunteer information we didn't ask for, it's usually because they're trying to control the narrative. What kind of details? I asked. She told us the storage unit smelled musty and had a flickering fluorescent light. She described your mother's handwriting on the insurance documents as shaky but precise. She knew the jade figurines were wrapped in yellow tissue paper. Morrison shook his head. Details only someone who'd been there would know. I thought about Sarah sitting in another interview room, probably still spinning lies and digging herself deeper. 8 years of marriage, and I'd never seen this side of her, the calculating criminal who could look me in the eye and try to destroy my life to save her own. She's demanding a lawyer now, Park said. Stopped cooperating the minute we started questioning the timeline discrepancies. Morrison stood up, extending his hand. Mr. Chen, I owe you an apology. Your wife is convincing, and she clearly planned this accusation as thoroughly as she planned the thefts. I shook his hand, still processing that the nightmare was over. What happens to her now? Grand theft, multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and now filing a false police report, Park rattled off. She's looking at 5 to 8 years, minimum. Through the interview room's small window, I could see the police station's parking lot. In 12 hours, my entire life had changed forever. The divorce attorney's office felt like a sanctuary compared to the police station. Janet Mills sat across from me in a leather chair that probably cost more than my monthly salary, reviewing the criminal case files Detective Morrison had provided. This is actually quite fortunate, she said, adjusting her reading glasses. Your wife's arrest simplifies the divorce proceedings considerably. I shifted uncomfortably. Fortunate isn't the word I'd use. From a legal standpoint, I mean. Janet's voice was professionally neutral. California is a community property state, but assets obtained through criminal activity don't qualify for equitable distribution. Sarah has no claim to any marital property. She pulled out a yellow legal pad and started making notes. The house is in your name only, correct? Yes. We bought it before we got married, and I never added her to the deed. A decision that had caused arguments back then. Sarah had wanted both names on everything, claiming it showed trust and commitment. Now I realized she'd been planning for this contingency even 8 years ago. Good. What about joint accounts? Checking and savings, both joint. Maybe 15,000 total. I rubbed my temples, still exhausted from the all-night police interrogation. She has access to all of it. Janet made another note. We'll freeze those accounts today. Given her history of financial deception, the court will likely award you the full balance. She looked up from her pad. What about retirement accounts, investments? Everything separate. We never combined our 401ks or IRAs. Another thing Sarah had complained about over the years. She'd called me paranoid for keeping our finances partially separated, accused me of not fully trusting her. Your wife was smarter than she realized, Janet said dryly. Her complaints about your financial boundaries are going to save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in divorce proceedings. I thought about Sarah sitting in a county jail cell, probably still believing she could talk her way out of this. Her bail had been set at $75,000, money she couldn't access without admitting where it came from. There's something else, I said, pulling out the safety deposit box key Sarah had given me. She told me there's about $8,000 in cash in here, plus some of my mother's jewelry she hadn't sold yet. Janet's eyebrows rose. She gave you access to evidence. She was panicking, trying to cooperate. I don't think she realized it would implicate her further. I set the key on Janet's desk. What do I do with this? Call Detective Morrison immediately. That cash is probably proceeds from the thefts, which makes it evidence in a criminal case. Janet leaned back in her chair. Mr. Chen, I have to ask, are you prepared for what's coming next? What do you mean? Your wife is facing serious prison time. Her lawyer is going to look for every possible angle to reduce her sentence. That might include trying to negotiate testimony against accomplices, claiming coercion or abuse, or painting herself as a victim of circumstances. Janet's expression was grave. She's already tried to frame you once. She may try again. The thought made my stomach clench. Her story fell apart completely. The police proved I wasn't involved. In the thefts, yes. But desperate people make desperate accusations. She might claim you were emotionally abusive, that you pressured her into stealing, that she was afraid of you. Janet pulled out another file. I've seen cases where criminals try to renegotiate plea deals by manufacturing domestic violence claims. She can't prove something that never happened. She doesn't have to prove it, she just has to create doubt. And Sarah has already demonstrated she's willing to lie under oath to save herself. Janet leaned forward. We need to be prepared for a character assassination campaign. I thought about Sarah's performance at the police station, how easily she twisted our innocent text messages into evidence of conspiracy. How she'd taken 8 years of normal marital conversations and weaponized them against me. What kind of preparation? Documentation. We'll need character witnesses, employment records, anything that establishes your reputation and stability. Bank records showing you didn't benefit from the stolen money. Phone records, emails, social media, anything that contradicts a narrative of abuse or coercion. Janet started a new list. We'll also petition the court to expedite the divorce proceedings. The sooner we dissolve this marriage, the better. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. David, please call me. I can explain everything. This is all a misunderstanding. Sarah. I showed the message to Janet, who frowned deeply. She's not supposed to contact you directly. That's violation of her bail conditions. Janet grabbed her phone. I'm calling the prosecutor's office right now. 20 minutes later, Detective Morrison called me back about Sarah's text message. We're issuing a warrant for her rearrest, he said grimly. She made bail this morning. Her sister Rebecca flew in from Phoenix with the money. I nearly dropped the phone. Her sister posted $75,000. Apparently Rebecca took out a second mortgage. Sarah convinced her this was all a misunderstanding, that you were having a breakdown and making false accusations. Morrison's voice carried disgust. Your wife is remarkably persuasive when she needs to be. Janet grabbed the phone from me. Detective, this is Janet Mills, Mr. Chen's attorney. How long was Sarah out before she violated the no-contact order? I could hear Morrison's voice through the speaker. 47 minutes. She went straight from the jail to a coffee shop and started texting your client. There was a pause. Mrs. Mills, there's something else. Sarah's attorney contacted our office an hour ago with a new plea negotiation proposal. What kind of proposal? Janet's voice was sharp. She wants to plead guilty to reduce charges in exchange for testifying against what she claims is a larger conspiracy involving Mr. Chen and potentially other family members. My blood turned to ice. Other family members? My mother is dead, and I'm an only child. What other family members? Your mother's estate attorney, Jonathan Walsh. Sarah is claiming he helped you identify the most valuable items to steal and advised you on how to liquidate them without triggering investigations. Janet and I exchanged glances. Jonathan Walsh had been Mom's lawyer for 30 years. He'd handled her will, walked me through the estate process, and helped me set up the charitable donation. He was 73 years old and had handled everything with perfect professionalism. That's insane, I said. Mr. Walsh barely knows me. We met twice, once when Mom died and once to finalize the donation paperwork. Sarah is claiming those meetings were planning sessions. She says Walsh provided insider knowledge about estate valuations and legal loopholes. Morrison sounded tired. She's also claiming Walsh was romantically involved with your mother and stood to benefit from manipulating her will. Janet closed her eyes. She's trying to create reasonable doubt by expanding the conspiracy. If she can convince a jury that multiple people were involved, it muddies the waters around her individual guilt. There's more, Morrison continued. Sarah told her lawyer that your mother's death wasn't natural. She's suggesting the heart attack was somehow induced, that you and Walsh murdered your mother for the inheritance money. The coffee shop around us seemed to fade away. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, feel the room spinning slightly. She's accusing me of murdering my own mother. Her exact words were, David couldn't wait for his inheritance. He and Walsh found a way to speed up the timeline. Morrison's voice was grim. Mr. Chen, I need to ask, are you prepared for your mother's body to be exhumed for additional autopsy testing? Janet grabbed my arm, steadying me as I swayed in my chair. Detective, that's completely premature. This is clearly a desperate attempt to. I understand that, Mrs. Mills, but if Sarah's attorney files the right motions, a judge might order the exhumation just to eliminate any doubt. It's happened before in inheritance cases. I thought about Mom's grave at Restwood Cemetery, the beautiful headstone I'd chosen with her favorite Bible verse carved beneath her name. The idea of disturbing her final rest because of Sarah's lies made me physically sick. How long would that take? I managed to ask. If ordered. 2 to 3 weeks for exhumation and full toxicology screening. But Mr. Chen, I need you to understand, this is almost certainly a stalling tactic. Sarah's attorney knows the murder accusations are baseless, but filing them buys time and pressures you to negotiate. Janet was already taking notes. They want David to drop the theft charges in exchange for Sarah dropping the murder accusations. Exactly. It's legal extortion, but it's effective. 6 weeks later, I stood in courtroom 4B watching Sarah's final gambit collapse in real time. Judge Patricia Martinez had just denied her attorney's motion for exhumation, calling it a transparent attempt to manipulate proceedings through baseless accusations. Sarah sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, looking nothing like the polished dental hygienist who used to kiss me goodbye every morning. When the judge read the verdict on all counts, guilty, Sarah's face crumpled, but I felt nothing except hollow relief. 8 years, 4 months, Detective Morrison said quietly beside me as the bailiff led Sarah away. She'll serve at least 6 with good behavior. Jonathan Walsh, Mom's 73-year-old estate attorney, squeezed my shoulder. Your mother would be proud, David. You protected her memory and those children she cared about. The numbers were final now, $197,000 recovered and donated to St. Mary's Children's Hospital. Sarah had managed to steal and spend $76,000 before getting caught, but even that hadn't disappeared completely. The safety deposit box had contained $12,000 in cash plus Mom's sapphire brooch, her gold coins, and 3 pieces of jewelry I thought were lost forever. Mr. Chen. A woman in a navy blazer approached our group. I'm Dr. Rebecca Chen, no relation, from St. Mary's Pediatric Oncology Unit. I wanted to thank you personally. She handed me a photo showing a hospital playroom filled with new equipment, comfortable chairs for parents, gaming systems for teenage patients, art supplies for younger kids. The Margaret Chen Memorial Playroom opened last week. Your mother's donation is already helping families cope with some of the hardest days of their lives. I studied the photo, seeing Mom's name on a brass plaque mounted beside a window overlooking the hospital's garden. She would have loved knowing her final gift created a space where children could just be children, even while fighting for their lives. There's something else, Dr. Chen continued. We received an additional donation yesterday. Rebecca Martinez, I believe that's your ex-wife's sister, sent us a check for $75,000. My mouth fell open. Sarah's bail money. The note said she felt responsible for trying to steal from sick children, and she wanted to make amends. Dr. Chen smiled. She also said her sister's actions had opened her eyes to what really mattered in life. Detective Morrison chuckled. Sarah's probably furious. Her sister not only lost the bail money when Sarah got rearrested, but then donated it to the exact cause Sarah was stealing from. Outside the courthouse, Janet Mills handed me the final divorce decree. It's official. The marriage is dissolved, you keep all assets, and Sarah has no claim to anything. She paused. Also, I have something for you. She pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was Mom's sapphire brooch, the one that had started this whole nightmare when I noticed it missing from the storage unit. Evidence has been released. Detective Morrison thought you should have this back. I held the brooch up to the afternoon sunlight, remembering how it had looked pinned to Mom's dress in every Christmas photo, every Easter service, every family gathering for 20 years. Sarah had kept it in a safety deposit box like a trophy, but now it was home. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Morrison, check your email. The message contained a single attachment, a photo of Sarah's mugshot from her final arrest, looking defeated and hollow. The subject line read, who else had access? Case closed. I deleted the photo without saving it. Sarah had already taken enough from my family's story.